Settle in wherever you are, and let your body be supported by whatever is under you, a bed, a sofa, or a chair, and let the steady rain stay in the background, like a soft, constant layer, behind every word. If the volume is a little high, it can be lowered, just enough so everything feels gentle, and even, and easy to follow. Tonight we will spend time with a simple object, and nothing surprising or dramatic will happen. The pacing will stay slow and steady, and the topic will stay ordinary from start to finish. The object is socks, a pair of socks, close-fitting textile coverings worn on the feet, usually inside shoes, to manage friction, moisture, and comfort during walking and standing. Socks are the kind of object that can be handled without much thought, and then put back, and handled again another day, in the same simple cycle. In a home, socks often rest in a sock drawer, or in a laundry basket or hamper, or near shoes by an entry area, or in a folded stack on a shelf, waiting in a quiet way. They are usually held in the hands by the opening, pinched lightly at the top edge where the foot enters, and widened just a little, and then pulled over the toes, and guided over the heel, and smoothed along the ankle. Nothing about this needs to be exciting, it is just a normal part of daily life, and we can stay with it calmly, for a long time, without any rush. Now we can move on. Chapter 1: The simple object on the foot. Socks are small, and easy to overlook, and that is part of their daily presence. They do not ask for attention, they simply wait. A drawer opens, and a hand scans, and a pair is lifted out, and the socks are soft or firm depending on their blend and thickness, and they fold easily in the hand. Socks are close-fitting textile coverings worn on the feet, and the idea is simple: a layer between the skin and the inside of a shoe, or a layer between the skin and the floor for a brief moment. There is the quiet idea of coverage, from the toes up to a chosen height, and that chosen height can be low, like no show, or it can reach the ankle, or rise above it, and the sock still remains the same kind of object, a practical covering that settles into place. The purpose stays steady, friction is managed between foot and shoe, moisture is held and moved through the fabric, and comfort stays more stable during walking and standing. When socks are first picked up, they can feel dry at first, and then later in the day they may feel different, because moisture changes the feel of fabric over time, and this is not always the same. The first contact is often the hand at the opening, the top edge where the foot enters, the fingers pinch and widen it slightly, and the fabric gives a little, then returns, because socks rely on stretch to stay in place during movement. That opening has an elastic feel, a slight grip that helps the sock stay up without discomfort, and this may vary. The sock is guided onto the foot, toes first, and then the heel is found, and the fabric is pulled up and smoothed, and the sock settles into place in a familiar way. There is a moment where the sock stops being an object in the hand, and becomes a layer on the foot, and the mind can let it fade into the background. Then the second sock follows, and the same motions repeat with small differences, and the moment both feet are covered arrives quietly. Back to the pair as a unit, two socks meant to be worn together, handled together, and used together, and the day begins from that small starting point. Recap: back to the pair of socks, doing the same job in the same quiet way. Chapter 2: The pair and the match. A pair is often treated as one object, even though it is two pieces of fabric, because daily use begins with keeping them together. A hand reaches into a drawer, or into a basket, and finds one sock, and then looks for its partner, and that small action is part of the routine. Sometimes the match is exact, two socks that are the same size and type, and sometimes the match is close enough, and the feet accept small differences, and the day continues. Matching by size and type matters because a close match reduces small differences in feel between feet, and that can make walking and standing feel more even. Matching can also be by feel more than by look. One sock feels slightly thicker, another feels slightly smoother, another feels a little tighter at the opening, and the hand notices this before the eye does. A near match can still work, two socks that are similar enough to be worn together, and the routine stays calm even if the match is not perfect. This is not always the same, because in some homes socks are kept in neat stacks, and in others they are kept in loose layers, and the matching step becomes easier or slower depending on the storage. The habit of keeping pairs together can be done by folding, where one sock is laid on the other, edges align, then drift apart slightly, and the folded pair returns to the drawer. It can also be done by rolling, where the socks become a cylinder shape, and the roll keeps pairs together, but rolling can stretch the opening over time, and this may vary. Sometimes socks are placed loosely in a drawer, not folded or rolled, and they become a loose inventory, a calm pile of similar objects waiting for the next use. The small pause happens when one sock is missing, and the hand holds a single sock, and there is a brief extra step, checking the drawer, checking the basket, checking the clean pile, and then choosing what to do next. A drawer encourages matching, because it holds socks in a stable place, and a basket disrupts matching, because socks gather with other fabrics and turn and twist and cling together after washing and drying. Even then, the routine stays simple, the pair is found, or almost found, and the day continues in the same practical way. Recap: the pair is found, or almost found, and the routine continues. Chapter 3: Lengths and where the fabric stops. Socks are often sorted in the mind by where they end on the leg, and this is a simple category that helps selection stay easy. No-show socks sit low, mostly hidden in a shoe, and the visible part is minimal, and this changes how the sock stays in place and how it is stored. An ankle-length sock rises to the ankle area, and that boundary feels familiar, not too high, not too low, a simple coverage that balances ease of putting on with enough fabric to feel steady. Crew-length socks rise above the ankle, and they add coverage, and can reduce rubbing at the shoe collar, where a shoe edge meets the skin. Mid-calf and knee-high socks rise higher, toward the lower leg, and toward the knee, and this changes how they are folded, and how they stay up, and how much drawer space they take. Higher lengths can feel like more fabric, and that extra fabric can take longer to dry after washing, and this may vary depending on thickness and material blend. Length changes shoe feel in small ways, because the sock can cover more of the area that touches the shoe, and it can change the feeling of the shoe collar, and the feeling of the ankle. Length changes staying up, because more fabric means more contact with the leg, and the opening grip can matter more, and fit can matter more, and this is not always the same. Length changes laundry drying, because a longer sock holds more fabric and may hold more moisture, and drying time can stretch a little longer, especially for thicker socks. In a drawer, length becomes a quiet category. A hand learns where to reach for the usual choice, and that choice repeats, day after day, without much thought. Sometimes the usual length is chosen because it fits the usual shoe, and sometimes because it feels familiar, and sometimes because it is simply the first pair reached in the drawer. Back to the pair of socks, and the fabric stops at a certain place, and then it stops at that place again, the next time, and the next time. Recap: a length is chosen, and the sock sits at that same place again. Chapter 4: Texture and thickness in daily use. The sock has an inside feel that can matter more than its appearance, because the inside surface meets the skin for many hours. Thickness is a quiet layer, material between foot and shoe, and thickness changes shoe feel, and drying time, and how the sock compresses under weight. Some socks feel smoother, and some feel more textured, and underfoot texture changes friction with the shoe insole, and that can influence slip or grip. Friction is resistance when surfaces rub, and socks manage friction between foot and shoe, helping the skin feel more stable during walking and standing. Slip is small movement of the sock on the foot, and slipping can lead to bunching, and bunching is fabric gathering in folds, and folds can press into skin or change shoe fit. The inside surface against skin can feel steady when dry, and it can feel different when damp, because friction can increase when damp, and this may vary by material blend. Moisture is sweat and dampness held in fibers, and moisture affects odor, drying, and skin feel, and it builds slowly during the day in a quiet way. Breathability is how easily air and moisture move through fabric, and it influences dampness during the day, and this is not always the same across different sock types. Absorbency is how much liquid fibers hold, and absorbent socks can feel damp but can reduce wetness on skin, and this may vary. Drying time is how long it takes to become dry after washing or wear, and drying time affects laundry routines and rotation, because socks move through a laundry cycle often. Odor is smell that can develop with wear, and odor often drives washing and replacement decisions, especially when socks are worn for long periods or stored damp. Over time, surface changes appear, pilling can form as small balls of fiber, fuzz can raise lightly on the surface, and thinning can happen in high wear areas like heel and toe. A small thin spot can be felt before it is seen, and the underfoot feel becomes slightly different, and then it becomes normal again until it changes more. Washing changes surface over time, and inside-out washing can reduce surface wear and improve cleaning of the inner surface, and this is not always the same for every sock. Back to the familiar feel, a steady layer, not special, just present, and then fading into the background again. Recap, the same inside feel returns, and then it fades into the background. Chapter 5: Drawer Life and Basket Life. Between cycles, socks rest somewhere, and that resting place shapes how they are found and used. The sock drawer is a calm storage space, where socks sit folded, rolled, or loose, and the drawer turns many socks into a quiet inventory. Some drawers hold neat stacks, rectangles of fabric, pairs aligned and repeated, and some drawers hold loose piles, where socks overlap softly and selection is a little more random. A folded pair can lose alignment and become two singles again, and a rolled pair can stretch at the opening over time, and this may vary. Near shoes by an entry area, socks can wait for quick use, a small stack or a loose pair set down without much thought, ready for the next time shoes are put on. Then there is the laundry basket or hamper, a mixed holding place, where socks gather with other fabrics, and they wait until the next wash. In the basket, socks can turn inside out without attention, because removal often turns them partly inside out, and they land with that shape and stay there. Socks can cling together after washing and drying, and a pair may come out together, or a sock may be stuck inside another garment, and this is not always the same. A clump can form, a loose bundle of socks in a basket, and clumps slow matching and can trap moisture, especially if socks are left damp in a pile. The drawer makes selection easier because it separates socks from other fabrics and makes categories like length and thickness easier to see by touch. The basket makes matching slower because it mixes socks with other items, and the pair becomes harder to find, and the routine adds one extra step. Back to the drawer again, because the cycle tends to return there, drawer to foot to shoe to laundry to drawer, the same simple pathway repeating. Recap, it is stored, it is mixed, and then it returns to storage again. Chapter 6: Putting on, one foot and then the other. Putting on socks is a sequence of small steps, familiar and repeatable, and the hands do it without much thought. One sock is held at the opening, the top edge where the foot enters, and the opening is widened slightly with 2 fingers. The toes enter first, and the sock slides over the front of the foot, and the fabric stretches, then settles back. The sock is pulled over the heel, and the heel area is adjusted with 2 fingers, because heel shaping can matter for how the sock sits. A small smoothing motion follows, fabric pressed flat along the top of the foot, a wrinkle softened, and the sock becomes a steady layer. The ankle area is smoothed, and the opening sits where it will sit for the day, with a slight grip, not too loose, not too tight, and this may vary. Then the second sock follows, and the same motions repeat, one foot first, then the other, and the repetition feels calm and predictable. The second sock often mirrors the first, but small differences happen. One sock may be stretched a little more, one heel may settle slightly differently, and this is not always the same. There is a brief check for bunching, a small press of the fingers to flatten fabric, because folds can press into skin or change shoe fit. Then there is the moment the pair feels set, both feet covered, both socks in place, and the hands move on to the next part of the routine. Back to the pair of socks, placed and adjusted in the same small way again. Recap: one foot, then the other, and the pair is in place again. Chapter 7: Inside the shoe, during walking and standing. Inside a shoe, a sock becomes a thin working layer, present but easy to forget. The foot presses down into the insole, and the sock compresses slightly underweight, and then relaxes again as weight shifts. Friction is managed between skin and shoe, and that steady management helps walking and standing feel more comfortable across many hours. Small shifts happen during walking. The sock may slide a little, then stop, and the foot settles again, and the same contact returns. Heel alignment matters, because if the heel area drifts down, bunching can form under the foot, and that changes feel inside the shoe. If the heel stays aligned, the sock feels steady, and if it drifts, the hand may adjust later, pulling the sock up by a few millimeters, and this may vary. Moisture builds slowly during the day, sweat held in fibers, and the sock can feel dry at first, then slightly damp after long wear. Breathability and absorbency influence how dampness feels, and different blends behave differently, and this is not always the same. Some socks feel lighter and dry faster after washing, and some feel steadier across long wear periods, and some hold moisture more, and the day continues either way. A leg crosses, the sock edge moves slightly, and a thumb pulls it up a small amount, a quiet midday adjustment that keeps the fabric where it belongs. Then the sock returns to steady contact between foot and surface again and again, in a small repeatable way. Recap: inside the shoe, the sock stays between foot and surface again and again. Chapter 8: End of day removal and the new shape. Near home, shoes come off, and socks remain briefly, and feet may touch the floor for a short moment. Removing socks is often faster than putting them on, because the motion is simple and practiced. A sock is pinched near the heel, and the fabric is pulled, and the sock slides away from the foot in one smooth movement. As it comes off, it often turns partly inside out, because the inside surface becomes outer for a moment, and then it folds on itself. The sock holds a curved shape for a moment, a soft tube that remembers the foot, and then it relaxes into a looser shape. Sometimes there is a quick shake, and sometimes there is no shake, and the sock is simply dropped into a basket, and this may vary. When it lands, it may separate from its pair, because the two socks are removed one after the other, and each falls in its own place among other fabrics. The basket receives the sock in a loose curve, and it becomes one item among many, waiting for laundry day, waiting for the next wash. The cycle pauses here, drawer to foot to shoe, and now basket, and the sock rests, partly inside out, partly folded, quietly present. Back to the pair of socks, now at rest, not being worn, just waiting in the same simple cycle. Recap: it comes off, it turns, and it rests in the basket again. Chapter 9: A slow history without urgency. Socks have a slow history, and the changes are usually small, about fit, about making, about daily use, and not about anything dramatic. Early foot coverings appear in many cultures, cloth or animal material wrapped or sewn to cover feet, for protection from abrasion and cold, and this may vary. Over time, more shaped foot coverings become common, pieces cut and joined to follow the foot shape more closely, because better fit reduces rubbing and slipping, and this is not always the same. Knitted or looped structures spread in different regions, stretchy loop textiles used for foot coverings, because stretch improves fit across different feet, and this may vary. Hand knitting becomes a regular home skill in some places. Socks made as household items, repaired and replaced at home, and this is not always the same. Standard lengths become recognizable categories. Common heights like ankle and calf become routine, influenced by footwear and clothing norms, and also warmth and coverage, and this may vary. Machine knitting develops and spreads, and socks can be made in larger quantities with more consistent size, and this is not always the same in every place. Sizing systems become more consistent. Labels begin to indicate size ranges rather than only simple size words, because mass production needs predictable fit, and this may vary. Cotton use expands with industrial textile supply chains, and cotton blends become common in everyday socks because of availability, washability, and cost, and this is not always the same. Synthetic fibers become common in blends, polyester and nylon added for durability and drying behavior, because longer wear and faster laundry cycles are practical, and this may vary. Elastane becomes a regular small addition, improving stretch, recovery and grip at the opening, helping socks stay up and keep shape longer, and this is not always the same. Sport-specific socks become more common, with cushioning zones and tighter fits offered for activities, and compression-style socks become widely available, with graduated tightness offered in consumer products, and this may vary. Care labeling becomes more standardized, fiber content and care instructions added, helping users wash and dry with fewer damaged items, and this is not always the same. Bulk multipacks become a common retail format, socks sold as sets with similar pairs, encouraging simple replacement and easy rotation, and this may vary. Odor control finishes and treatments become common in some socks, offered to manage smell during wear, and this may vary. And through all these slow steps, the daily reality remains the same. A drawer opens, a pair is lifted out, a foot enters, and the simple cycle continues. Recap: small changes over time, and still the same pair used in the same way. Chapter 10: The Missing Sock and the Quiet Search. A missing sock creates a small extra step, not a big problem, just a brief pause in an ordinary routine. One sock is present, and the other is absent, and the hand holds the single sock for a moment, noticing the missing partner. The search is usually brief and gentle, checking the basket, then the machine, then a pile of laundry, moving fabric aside without urgency. Sometimes the missing sock is under clothes in a pile, pressed flat and quiet, and it is picked up later. Sometimes it is inside another garment, clinging after washing and drying, and it comes out when that garment is turned. Sometimes it is near a bed, a single sock on the floor, slipped behind furniture easily because socks are small, and this may vary. When the sock is found, the pair returns to being a unit, two pieces together again, and the routine returns to its normal speed. When it is not found, the routine adapts, another sock is chosen, a near match accepted for the day, and the day does not change much. A quiet misuse can happen, socks worn without a matching pair, accepted for the day, without much thought, because comfort can be good enough. The single sock can become an orphan, a sock separated from its pair, kept in a small corner of the drawer or near the laundry area, waiting for repairing. Orphans can collect slowly, because misplacement happens, and the cycle of laundry and storage can separate pairs in small ways. Then, later, there can be a quiet re-matching attempt, holding one sock against another, checking size and type, matching by feel, and returning two socks to the same place again. Back to the pair of socks, found, or almost found, and the simple cycle continues. Recap: one is missing, one is found, and the routine continues anyway. Chapter 11: Returning to the drawer, returning to the start. After washing, socks become ready objects again, clean and dry, and prepared for daily use. Socks can be washed after 1 to 2 wears depending on use and moisture, and this may vary, and then they move through drying and return to storage. Some people turn socks inside out to clean the inner surface, and this can reduce surface wear and improve cleaning, and this is not always the same. Socks are shaken once after washing, smoothed and set in a pile, and then the calm work of pairing begins again. Two socks are matched, size and type checked by touch, and the pair becomes one unit again in the hands. Then folding happens slowly, one sock laid on the other, edges align, and then the folded pair is placed into the drawer among similar pairs. Or rolling happens, a cylinder shape that keeps pairs together, and can be quick to grab, and this may vary. Some socks are placed loosely in the drawer, and the drawer becomes a quiet inventory again, a place of repeated options. Rotation happens, using multiple pairs over time, spreading wear and helping pairs last longer, and rotation becomes a gentle habit. Seasonal use can shift the drawer, thicker socks move forward, thinner socks move back, and the drawer changes without urgency, and this may vary. Then the drawer closes, and the socks rest again, and the next morning the same action repeats, a drawer opens, a hand scans, a pair is lifted out. Back to the pair of socks, back to the drawer, back to the same simple start, in a small repeatable way. Recap, back to the pair of socks, back to the drawer, back to the same simple start. Chapter 12 From Fiber to Yarn, quietly. Before socks are socks, they begin as fibers, chosen in a calm, practical way, for daily use. A small set of choices repeats, and those choices shape the feel later. Fiber selection happens first, where fibers are chosen by type and grade, with the aim of steady material that can be turned into yarn. Sometimes there can be inconsistent staple length in the fibers, and this may vary. Even with that, there are basic checks for fiber identity and cleanliness, so the starting point stays dependable. After that, fibers are cleaned and opened, meaning they are loosened and cleaned of debris. This is a quiet step, more like preparing something to be handled smoothly. Sometimes small debris can remain, and this is not always the same. The checks here can be simple, including visual checks and weight-based checks, just to keep the process steady. Then blending happens, where fibers are mixed to target ratios, such as cotton with synthetic. This blending is one of those repeating decisions that quietly matters. The goal is balance, a familiar base with small advantages added. Sometimes there can be uneven blend pockets, and this may vary. Blend consistency sampling helps keep the mixture from drifting too far in one direction. After blending comes carding, where fibers are aligned into a loose web and condensed. It is a step that brings order to something fluffy and irregular, and makes it easier to continue. Sometimes neps can appear, tiny fiber knots, and this is not always the same. Sliver evenness checks help keep the material from becoming too uneven. Then drawing happens, where slivers are combined and stretched for uniformity. It is repetitive and measured, and it leans toward consistency rather than speed. Sometimes there can be thickness variation, and this may vary. Evenness measurement helps keep the yarn that comes later from being too unpredictable. Then spinning, where fibers are twisted into yarn. This is one of the key quiet transformations, because the loose material becomes a steady strand that can be knitted. Yarn thickness and twist are small choices that matter later, and they influence softness, wear, and how the sock dries. Sometimes there can be weak spots or uneven twist, and this is not always the same. Yarn strength and count tests help keep the yarn from becoming unreliable. After spinning, yarn winding happens, where yarn is wound onto cones for machines. It is simple and practical, and it prepares the yarn to feed smoothly into knitting equipment. Sometimes there can be tension issues, and this may vary. Cone weight and tension checks help keep the feeding steady. Dyeing can also happen, either to yarn or to finished socks. It is optional, and it depends on the product. Sometimes there can be uneven dye uptake, and this is not always the same. Shade sampling and wash fastness sampling can help keep the appearance from drifting too much. All of these steps are calm in their own way, and they repeat. The fabric becomes the sock, one step at a time, in the same repeated process. Back to the same practical shape, even before it exists, because the aim is always a usable sock that behaves predictably. Recap: the fabric becomes the sock, one step at a time, in a repeated process. Chapter 13: the knit structure, loops that hold. A sock is made of loops that hold together. The idea is simple, even if the result feels detailed. Loops hold, loops stretch, and the sock keeps its shape in a small repeated way. Knitting is interlocking loops, and those loops create a structure that can stretch, then return. That stretch and return is part of what makes socks feel close-fitting on the foot, without needing a rigid shape. In many cases, circular knitting is used to create a tube shape. The tube is the base that will become a sock, and it is made in a planned, repeatable way. Machines are set for size, gauge, and pattern, and that setup matters because small setting changes can cause size drift, and this may vary. First article measurement helps catch wrong settings early, so the run stays steady. Knit density is another quiet decision. It changes thickness, breathability, and how the sock moves in a shoe. Dense knits can feel thicker and can change shoe fit, and looser knits can feel lighter, and this is not always the same across sock types. The loops themselves hold moisture in a way that depends on the material blend and the knit structure. Some structures feel more breathable, and some hold moisture longer, and this may vary. The same loop structure that stretches can also create places where moisture sits, and the feel can change slowly over time during wear. Friction also plays a role here, because loops wear down under friction. Inside a shoe, the sock is always in contact with a surface, and the loop structure is always being pressed and rubbed in small ways. Over many wears, this can lead to gradual thinning and worn smooth patches, and this is not always the same. During circular knitting, the sock tube is knitted with planned shaping zones. Even at this stage, the idea of the finished sock is present, a tube that will later become foot-shaped. Sometimes dropped stitches can happen, and this may vary. Visual stitch inspection helps keep those small problems from becoming bigger ones. Knit choice affects shoe fit. A thicker, denser knit can change how a shoe feels, and a different surface can change slip or grip with an insole. Underfoot texture changes friction with a shoe insole, and users notice slip or grip in daily use. And then, after all the loops, and all the steady repetitions, the tube still becomes a sock in the same practical way. The fabric becomes the sock, one step at a time. Recap: loops hold, loops stretch, and the sock keeps its shape in a repeated way. Chapter 14: Shaping without making it complicated. Shaping is an adjustment, not a separate object. The knit changes slightly so the sock sits on the foot. Back to the same practical shape, made the same way again. A foot is not just a simple tube, so shaping steps help the sock feel normal when worn. The goal is not drama, just fit that feels ordinary. Size targets matter, and measurement points matter, because a pair should feel similar on both feet. Keeping symmetry between two socks is part of what makes the pair feel like one unit. This requires repeatable shaping steps and consistent measurement, and the process stays calm and mechanical. Heel shaping is one of the main fit helpers. The heel area is formed by changing the knit structure so it fits the heel shape. Better fit can reduce rubbing wear, and that shows up slowly across many wears. Sometimes heel shaping can be uneven, and this may vary. Size and shape checks help keep the heel from drifting into a shape that feels off. Toe shaping also matters, because toes need space, and the sock needs to narrow toward the end in a controlled way. The toe area is formed as the knit narrows toward the end. Sometimes toe shape can be too tight or too loose, and this is not always the same. Measurement and feel checks help keep that space from becoming uncomfortable. Then the toe needs to be closed. Toe closure can be done by linking or seaming. The goal is a smooth enough closure that it does not distract the wearer. Sometimes a ridge or misalignment can happen at the seam, and this may vary. Seam smoothness checks help reduce those ridges, but small ridges can still exist and be noticed later, often by feel first. Shaping is also about avoiding bulk where shoes press. Shoes have limited space, so bulky areas can change fit and cause pressure. The shaping steps aim to keep the sock close-fitting without extra lumps, especially where a shoe presses and rubs. Making many sizes with similar feel is another quiet challenge. Socks are sized by foot length and shoe size, and a size range needs consistency across production. Thickness scaling across sizes can change how larger sizes feel, and this may vary. The aim is that a pair from one size feels similar to a pair from another size, in the ways that matter most, like stretch, grip, and shoe feel. All of this shaping returns to simple fit. The sock becomes foot-shaped through small control changes, and the result is meant to feel like it always belonged on the foot. Recap: back to the same practical shape, made through small repeatable shaping steps. Chapter 15: Blends and what they quietly solve. Blends are chosen for simple reasons. Each fiber adds one small advantage. A small set of choices repeats, and the sock behaves in a steady way. A common base is a cotton blend, often cotton with some polyester or nylon and elastane. Manufacturers choose it for familiar feel, easy washing, wide supply, and moderate cost. In daily use, it tends to feel dry at first, then can feel damp after long wear. Friction is medium against skin, and it can increase when damp, and this may vary. Porosity is medium, and it holds moisture. Cotton blend heat tolerance is medium, and it can shrink with high heat and agitation, and this is not always the same. Over time, typical aging patterns include gradual thinning at heel and toe, fading, and slight loss of shape. Typical failure patterns include holes after thinning, stretched opening, and worn smooth patches. Another blend is wool, often a wool blend with nylon and elastane. Manufacturers choose it for moisture management, insulation, odor resistance, and resilience in a blend. In daily use, it can feel steady across long wear periods, and it can feel less clammy than some cotton in damp conditions, and this may vary. Porosity can be medium to high, and it can manage moisture without feeling soaked quickly. Wool blend heat tolerance is lower in practice due to felting and shrink risk with heat and agitation. This is not always the same, but the risk exists. Typical aging patterns include surface fuzz, mild pilling, and gradual thinning. Typical failure patterns can include shrink or felt from hot wash, holes at pressure points, and stretched shape if over-dried, and this may vary. Synthetic blends are another common route, polyester or nylon with elastane, sometimes mostly synthetic. Manufacturers choose them for durability, faster drying, shape retention, and consistent manufacturing. In daily use, they often feel lighter and dry faster after washing, and they can feel slightly different in texture, sometimes smoother. Friction varies by knit, and can feel slicker or grippier depending on surface, and this may vary. Porosity is medium, and often holds less water than cotton, but it can trap odor in oils, and this is not always the same. Synthetic blends have heat tolerance that is medium, and can be damaged by high dryer heat over time. Typical aging patterns include pilling, slight sheen changes, and elastic fatigue. Typical failure patterns can include thinning, seam irritation if fit is off, and persistent odor if oils build up, and this may vary. Small elastane addition helps staying up and stretch. It is used in small amounts, but it changes grip and shape retention. Elastane is fed during manufacturing for grip and stretch, and uneven elastic tension can happen, and this may vary. Stretch and recovery sampling helps keep the feel from drifting too much. Blends also change odor behavior and washing outcomes. Some materials can develop persistent odor if oils build up, and some blends are chosen for odor resistance, and this is not always the same. The blend changes how the sock dries and how it keeps shape, and these changes show up slowly across many wears and washes. Back to the same practical shape, because after all the material decisions, the sock still needs to be worn, washed, and worn again, in the same calm cycle. Recap: a small set of material choices repeats, and the sock behaves in a steady way. Chapter 16: Elastic and the gentle grip. Elastic is used in small amounts, but it matters. It helps the sock stay where it is placed. The grip is meant to be steady. Elastic at the opening is one of the most noticeable uses. It is the gentle grip at the top edge, the part that sits on the leg and keeps the sock from sliding down. The amount of elastic at the opening changes grip on the leg. Users notice marks or sagging. The trade-off is grip versus comfort, and this is not always the same across different socks. Elastic can also be present in the body for fit, not just at the opening. It helps the sock stay close-fitting along the foot and ankle, so the fabric does not drift and bunch. Tension balance matters here, not too tight, not too loose. Too tight can leave marks and feel restrictive. Too loose can lead to sagging and slipping. The aim is a quiet middle point, where the sock stays in place without demanding attention. Elastic changes with heat. Heat can reduce elastic life, and over time, elastic can be damaged by high dryer heat. Over-drying can stress elastic, and this may vary depending on how often heat is used. The change is gradual and usually noticed as slipping, a sock that no longer stays where it once did. Elastic also changes with time. Repeated stretching adds up. Stretch zone mapping changes where the sock yields more, and repeated stretching affects recovery, and this is not always the same. Rolling can stress elastic. Packaging fold method can also affect stress, because folded too tight can stretch openings. Rolling at home can stretch the opening over time, and this may vary. A gentle approach, like folding rather than tight rolling, can reduce stress on the opening, and this is not always the same in every routine. Gentle drying helps. Drying is meant to bring the sock to a stable state, but too much heat or too long can add stress. Moisture is removed by air or machine drying, and moisture content checks are part of keeping the process steady. Even with all these choices and changes, the function stays simple. It grips, it relaxes, and it grips again, in a repeated cycle. Back to the same practical shape. Recap: it grips, it relaxes, and it grips again, in a repeated cycle. Chapter 17: Surface feel: smooth, textured, and changing. Surface is what the foot notices first, even if the eye does not. A small texture change can feel larger than it looks. Some socks have smoother knits and lower bulk. Smooth surfaces can feel easier inside a shoe, with less noticeable texture against the skin. They can also change how the sock slides against an insole, and this may vary. Other socks have textured knits and more grip. Underfoot texture changes friction with a shoe insole. Users notice slip or grip. The trade-off can be smoother feels easier, textured feels steadier, and this is not always the same. Underfoot textures can be designed to influence shoe contact. They can make the sock feel more stable, or they can change the way the foot shifts during walking and standing. The decision shows up in a quiet way through daily routine. Surface also collects lint. Textured areas can hold lint more easily, and ribbing can hold lint too, and this may vary. Lint is a small daily companion in laundry and drawers, and it clings to fabric in a calm, ordinary way. Surface can pill. Pilling is one of those slow changes where fibers lift and form small pills. Over time, surfaces shift. Fibers lift, then break, then smooth down. The sock stays usable through many small transitions. Some materials show specific surface patterns. Wool blends can develop surface fuzz and mild pilling. Cotton blends can develop worn smooth patches and gradual thinning at heel and toe. Synthetic blends can show pilling and slight sheen changes, and this may vary. The surface can become smoother with wear. That is part of how friction and pressure slowly polish fabric. It is not a sudden change. It is gradual. Washing also changes surface slowly. Washing and relaxing helps remove residues and set shape, but over time it also contributes to surface change. Denser knits can dry slower, and thicker zones dry slower, and this may vary. Seams can trap soil. Textured areas hold lint. These are small quiet patterns that repeat. Back to the inside feel, because the inside feel is what the wearer lives with, even when the sock looks the same from the outside. The fabric becomes the sock, one step at a time, and then it keeps becoming itself through wear and washing. Recap: the surface changes a little, then a little more, and still it remains a sock. Chapter 18: The calm finishing steps. Finishing turns a newly knitted item into something ready for daily routines. The steps remove residues and set the shape. The fabric becomes the sock, one step at a time, even here at the end of production. After knitting and shaping, socks are washed and relaxed. This helps remove residues and set shape. Sometimes residual oils or chemicals can remain, and this may vary. Checks by smell and feel sampling can help catch that, keeping the final sock closer to what the wearer expects. Then boarding, or form setting, can happen. Socks are placed on forms and heated lightly. The goal is to set a consistent shape. Sometimes there can be uneven length, and this is not always the same. Length and width checks help keep the result steady. Drying follows. Moisture is removed by air or machine drying. Moisture content checks help ensure the sock is dry enough without being pushed too far. Over-drying can stress elastic, and this may vary. Heat can reduce elastic life, and repeated heat exposure adds up over time. Then trimming. Loose threads are removed. Sometimes threads can be missed, and this is not always the same. A visual scan helps, and the aim is a sock that feels finished, without small loose ends that catch attention. Pairing happens next. Two socks are matched by size and color batch. Sometimes mismatches can happen, and this may vary. Pair verification sampling helps reduce this, so the pair feels like a pair. Labeling follows, where fiber content and care instructions are added. Sometimes the wrong label can happen, and this is not always the same. Label audits help keep information aligned with the product. Packaging comes after, where socks are banded, folded, and placed in packs. Sometimes folding too tight can stretch openings, and this may vary. Pack inspection is part of keeping socks from arriving already stressed. Then final inspection and carton packing. Finished packs are boxed for shipping. Sometimes items can be missing, and this is not always the same. Count and seal checks help keep packs complete. All these finishing steps are quiet forms of organization. They help the sock enter a drawer and join a rotation without confusion. Back to the drawer-ready object, ready to repeat the same calm cycle. Recap: the sock is checked, paired, and made ready for the same daily cycle. Chapter 19: Imperfections that happen and are noticed later. Manufacturing is consistent, but not perfectly identical. Small differences are common. Most are felt only in quiet moments. Small size drift between pairs can happen. Machines can be set for size and gauge, but wrong settings can cause size drift, and this may vary. Even with checks, small drift can remain, and it may show up as one sock feeling slightly tighter or slightly looser. Toe seam ridges can happen. Toe closure can have a ridge or misalignment, and this is not always the same. A ridge might be noticed when the foot is still, or when a shoe presses the toes in a certain way. Loose threads can happen. Trimming is meant to remove loose threads, but missed threads can occur, and this may vary. Often a loose thread is noticed when putting socks on. A small line of fiber caught on a finger. Slight color mismatch within a pack can happen. Dyeing can have uneven dye uptake, and this may vary. Pairing tries to match by color batch, but small differences can remain, especially when lighting changes from room to room. Uneven elastic tension can happen. Elastane is fed for grip and stretch, and tension can vary, and this is not always the same. This might show up as one sock staying up slightly better than the other. Tiny thin areas from knitting issues can happen. Dropped stitches can occur during circular knitting. Knit density can vary with small changes. These are small, but over time, thin areas can become clearer under pressure. Users often notice by feel first. A sock with a small imperfection often still works. It stays in rotation until wear makes the difference more clear. The approach becomes quiet and practical, good enough use, day after day. Back to the same practical shape, even when it is not perfect. The goal is not a flawless object. The goal is a usable sock that repeats daily life routines. Recap: small differences remain small, and the sock keeps being used. Chapter 20: Design choices that show up in daily habits. Design choices shape habits quietly. A small set of choices repeats, and the same habits follow. Multipacks encourage repetition. When socks arrive as a set, they support rotation habits. A drawer can become a row of similar pairs, easy to grab, easy to replace, and the cycle stays simple. Special use socks can lead to separate storage. Athletic socks, hiking socks, compression socks, and other variants can be kept apart, because they have a different feel or a different purpose, and this may vary. A special pair encourages separation and careful storage, while everyday pairs join the general pile. Thickness influences shoe choice. A denser knit or more cushioning can make a shoe feel tighter. Thicker zones can dry slower after washing. Reinforcement level changes durability at heel and toe, and users notice thickness and stiffness. The trade-off is longer life versus bulk. Length influences outfit choice, and also how far the sock rises. Coverage and staying power change with length category. More fabric can mean longer drying time. Less fabric can mean less coverage, and this is not always the same depending on daily needs. Texture influences slip and grip. Underfoot texture changes friction with a shoe insole. Textured areas can hold lint. Smooth knits can feel easier, textured knits can feel steadier, and this may vary. Elastic influences comfort marks. Elastic amount at the opening changes grip. Users may notice marks or sagging. Compression amount, if used, changes pressure along foot and leg. Users notice tightness. Elastic fatigue can be faster with heat, and this is not always the same across routines. Toe seam style influences ridges. Users notice ridges. Seams can trap soil. Heel shaping influences heel slip. Better fit reduces rubbing wear. Ribbing style at the leg changes stretch and airflow. Users notice how it stays up. Ribbing can hold lint, and this may vary. Color and dye choice influences fading and dye transfer risk. Dark dyes can bleed early, and this needs verification. Antimicrobial or odor control treatment changes odor behavior. Some treatments wash out, and this needs verification. Label reading versus ignoring labels becomes a habit too. Labels describe fiber and care, but some people follow them closely, and some do not. This is not always the same. The sock still moves through wash, dry, fold, return, regardless. And after all these design choices, the daily reality returns, a hand reaches, a pair is lifted out, and the usual pair is worn again. Recap: a small set of choices repeats, and the same habits follow. Chapter 21: Packaging and arriving at home. Packaging is a short stage in the sock's life. It holds shape and keeps sets together. Then it is removed and forgotten. Socks can arrive in flat folds and bands. The fold method can change how socks arrive and store. Users may notice creases and stretched openings, and this may vary. The trade-off can be tidy pack versus less stress. Keeping pairs together at purchase is one of the main goals of packaging. It supports the idea of a pair, two socks meant to live together. Packaging gives a brief period of order before daily life routines begin. Labels describe fiber and care. Fiber content and care instructions are added, helping the sock enter a drawer and join rotation with less confusion. Sometimes labels can be wrong, and this is not always the same, which is why label audits exist in the process. At home, the first wash before first wear can happen. This is not always the same. Some socks go straight into the drawer, and some go into laundry first. Washing and relaxing can remove residues and set shape. The first wear feel can be influenced by that first wash, and this may vary. Then sorting into the drawer happens. Socks become drawer objects again. They join the rotation. They repeat the same cycle as older pairs, drawer to foot to shoe to laundry and back. Joining rotation is the quiet end of the journey. The sock is no longer new in a meaningful way. It is simply another pair, ready to be used, washed, dried, and used again. Back to the drawer ready object, ready to repeat the same calm cycle. Recap: back to the drawer ready object, ready to repeat the same calm cycle. Chapter 22: First wears and the early settling. A new pair of socks can feel slightly different at first, even when it is the same type you have worn many times before, and the difference is usually small and quiet. The first wear after purchase often feels a little crisp in the fabric, a little less relaxed, and the sock may feel like it holds its shape more strongly for a while. Then the day moves on, and the sock does its job, managing friction, moisture, and comfort during walking and standing, in the same ordinary way as any other pair. After a wash, fibers can sit closer, and the sock can feel more like itself. The fabric relaxes slightly. The fit becomes familiar and less noticeable. This may vary. Stretch feel can change a little in the first few wears. The opening can feel slightly firmer at first, then a little more normal later. The sock is still close-fitting, and the goal is still the same, to stay in place without much attention. In the early days with a new pair, you may notice which shoes fit best with that thickness and that length. Some shoes feel better with a thinner sock, and some feel better with a thicker one, and this is not always the same. Early pilling can appear in some blends. Small pills can form from friction, and the surface can look a little different, even while the sock still feels normal on the foot. This may vary. Then the pair becomes normal. It becomes part of the drawer. It becomes part of the routine. It is handled, and then it is put back. It is worn, and then it is washed, and then it returns again, without any need for attention. Back to the same pair, slightly changed, and still doing the same job. Recap, back to the same pair, slightly changed, and still doing the same job. Chapter 23: Moisture, Drying, and the Quiet Role of Air. Moisture is part of normal wear. It appears slowly during walking and standing, and it leaves slowly too, and the sock's job includes holding and releasing it in a calm, ordinary way. Dampness can build gradually through the day. At first the sock may feel dry, then later it may feel slightly different, a little more heavy, a little more warm, a little more close to the skin. This may vary. Shoes can affect drying between wears. A sock that goes straight into a closed shoe again can stay damp longer, and a sock that has time in open air can feel drier sooner. This is not always the same, because homes and habits differ. Some people air socks before dropping them into a pile. Some drop them into a pile right away. Both are common patterns, and the difference shows up later. A damp pile can keep odor. When socks are left damp in a heap, moisture stays longer, and smell can stay stronger. This may vary. Full drying can reset the feel. When a sock is fully dry, the fabric often feels lighter, and more neutral, and less noticeable. It becomes easy to forget again. Rotation can be a drying strategy. When you have many pairs, the socks can rest between wears, and that rest lets air do its quiet work. A pair is worn, then it rests, then another pair is worn, and the drawer becomes a calm cycle. Wear is gradual, and moisture is gradual too. It arrives, it leaves, and the routine continues. Recap, wash, dry, fold, return, and let the air do its quiet work. Chapter 24: Washing Cycles and Small Choices. Washing socks is one of the most repeated care routines in a home. The steps are familiar, and the choices are small, but they can add up over time. Some people sort socks with similar fabrics. Some do not. This is not always the same. Sorting can keep similar textures together, and it can reduce some kinds of friction between different garments during washing. Turning socks inside out is another small choice. Socks often turn inside out during removal anyway, and some people leave them that way for washing. This can help clean the surface that touches the skin. It can also change what wears first over many cycles. This may vary. Water temperature is a choice that changes the experience. Some washes are cooler, some are warmer, and the sock responds slowly across many cycles. This is not always the same. Detergent amount and residue can change how socks feel after washing. Too much can leave a different feel in the fabric, and too little can leave the sock feeling less refreshed. This may vary. Agitation and wear are tied together. The more movement and rubbing in a wash, the more the surface can change over time. Pilling, fuzz, and thinning can all be influenced by repeated friction. Wear is gradual. Rinsing fully matters for how the sock feels afterward. When rinsing is thorough, the sock can feel more neutral. When it is not, the sock can feel slightly different. This may vary. Frequent washing changes fibers slowly. The surface can drift. The texture can shift. The sock still works, and the changes arrive in small steps, not all at once. Then it returns to the drawer. Wash, dry, fold, return, and the same order happens again. Recap: wash, dry, fold, return, in the same order again. Chapter 25: Drying heat and elastic fatigue. Drying is where heat often enters the sock's life. Heat can make laundry faster, and heat can also shorten elastic life over time. This may vary. Air drying versus machine drying is a common choice. Air drying tends to be gentler. Machine drying tends to be quicker. Many homes use both, depending on time and habit. Low heat versus high heat is another choice. Higher heat can speed drying, but it can also stress elastic, and the effect can show up later as a change in grip. This may vary. Stretch recovery is how well the sock returns to its shape after being stretched. Heat can affect stretch recovery slowly, and over time the opening can feel less steady, or the sock can slide down more often. This is not always the same, because socks differ and routines differ. Over drying can change feel. A sock that is dried too long can feel a little more stiff, or a little less forgiving, and elastic can be stressed. This may vary. Thick socks can hold moisture longer. A thicker knit can take longer to fully dry, and that longer drying time can shape rotation habits. A person may choose a thinner pair on busy days, and a thicker pair when there is more time. This may vary. Drying time shapes the drawer cycle. If socks are not fully dry, they do not return to the drawer. They remain in a pile, or on a rack, or in a basket, and the routine adjusts around that delay. Then the opening either stays up, or it slowly stays up less well. The change is gradual. It shows up as a small daily adjustment, a quick pull upward at the ankle, a small fix that repeats. Back to the same pair, and the grip is either steady or slowly less steady. Recap: back to the same pair, and the grip is either steady or slowly less steady. Chapter 26: Thinning and the first signs you feel. Wear is gradual. Often the foot notices before the eye does. The sock begins to feel different under pressure, and the difference is usually subtle at first. Underfoot areas can wear smooth. The fabric that once felt slightly textured can feel flatter, and the pressure of standing can feel a little more direct. Heel thinning is often felt before it is seen. The heel is a high friction place inside a shoe, and over time it can become lighter. The foot can notice that slight change when walking, even if the sock still looks normal in the drawer. Stretch recovery is how well the sock returns to its shape after being stretched. Heat can affect stretch recovery slowly, and over time the opening can feel less steady, or the sock can slide down more often. This is not always the same, because socks differ and routines differ. Over drying can change feel. A sock that is dried too long can feel a little more stiff, or a little less forgiving, and elastic can be stressed. This may vary. Thick socks can hold moisture longer. A thicker knit can take longer to fully dry, and that longer drying time can shape rotation habits. A person may choose a thinner pair on busy days, and a thicker pair when there is more time. This may vary. Drying time shapes the drawer cycle. If socks are not fully dry, they do not return to the drawer. They remain in a pile, or on a rack, or in a basket, and the routine adjusts around that delay. Then the opening either stays up, or it slowly stays up less well. The change is gradual. It shows up as a small daily adjustment, a quick pull upward at the ankle, a small fix that repeats. Back to the same pair, and the grip is either steady or slowly less steady. Recap: back to the same pair, and the grip is either steady or slowly less steady. Chapter 26: Thinning and the first signs you feel. Wear is gradual. Often the foot notices before the eye does. The sock begins to feel different under pressure, and the difference is usually subtle at first. Underfoot areas can wear smooth. The fabric that once felt slightly textured can feel flatter, and the pressure of standing can feel a little more direct. Heel thinning is often felt before it is seen. The heel is a high-friction place inside a shoe, and over time it can become lighter. The foot can notice that slight change when walking, even if the sock still looks normal in the drawer. Over time, some areas become smoother. Underfoot pressure and rubbing can polish the surface. Other areas can become patchy, with one section smoother and another section slightly more fuzzy. These changes can affect inside shoe feel. A smoother patch can feel like it slides a little more on an insole. A fuzzier patch can feel like it grips a little more. This may vary. Sometimes these changes are harmless, but noticeable. The inside feel becomes slightly different, then becomes normal again, as the wearer stops paying attention to it. Back to the same pair, slightly changed on the surface. Wash, dry, fold, return, and the sock continues. Recap, back to the same pair, slightly changed on the surface. Chapter 28: Odor Patterns and Resetting Them Gently. Odor often guides sock care. Sometimes it fades with washing and drying. Sometimes it stays and asks for a small routine change. This may vary. After a long day, socks can smell stronger. Moisture and warmth can build, and the sock holds that day inside its fabric until it is washed and dried. Sometimes odor fades with drying alone. A sock that is aired out can smell less noticeable once it is dry, even before washing. This is not always the same. Sometimes odor remains after washing. A sock can come out of laundry still holding a faint smell, and that can happen more with some blends and some routines. This may vary. Shoes can play a role in odor persistence. A sock that returns to a shoe that holds odor can pick it up again. A sock that stays in a fresher shoe can stay more neutral. This may vary. Occasional soaking routines can be used by some people. This may vary. The goal is often to help odor reset when normal washing does not fully reset it. Full drying is a baseline remedy. A sock that is fully dry often feels and smells more neutral. Dampness can make smell feel stronger. Dryness can make smell feel weaker. Rotation and airing habits matter too. When socks rest between wears, and when they have time in air, odor can be less persistent. When socks stay in damp piles, odor can hold longer. Then the sock returns to neutral, or it does not, and either way the routine continues calmly, with the same small care steps repeated. Wash, dry, fold, return, and see what changes quietly. Recap: wash, dry, fold, return, and see what changes quietly. Chapter 29: The Single Sock Phase. A pair can split during laundry, and a single sock can become an orphan. This is a normal household pattern, quiet and common. One sock goes into the basket, and the other sock goes somewhere else, tucked inside another garment, or left in a machine, or dropped in a different corner. This may vary. The orphan often lives in a separate place. It waits. It is checked against other singles from time to time, and it becomes part of a small collection. Some homes have an orphan corner in the drawer, or a small pile near the laundry area, where single socks are kept, not thrown away yet, just waiting. Then, periodically, there is a rematching attempt. A hand compares one single sock to another, checking size and type by feel, and trying to rebuild a pair. Sometimes the match returns. Sometimes it does not. This is not always the same. When the match returns, the pair becomes a unit again, and it slides back into the drawer like nothing happened. Near matches can be used temporarily. When the exact partner does not appear, a similar sock can be worn for a day, and the day continues. Orphans can also be used for cleaning tasks in some homes. A sock is already shaped and easy to hold, and it can be used like a cloth. This may vary. Orphans are sometimes saved just in case. They wait, they are checked again later, and they remain a small leftover from a routine object. Back to the pair, or back to the single, in the same quiet household pattern. Recap, back to the pair, or back to the single, in the same quiet household pattern. Chapter 30 Repair, Avoidance, and Quiet Retirement. Socks often end use without a formal decision. A hole appears, and the pair is worn less. The sock becomes a backup, and the change happens slowly. Small holes can be noticed first by feel. A toe catches a thin spot. A heel feels lighter. Then, later, the eye sees the worn area more clearly. Sometimes a sock with a small hole is worn anyway for a short time. It can still feel good enough at home, or good enough for a quick use. This may vary. Some people try a simple stitch repair, and many do not. This is not always the same. Repair can extend use, but it can also change feel at the repair spot, and that change can be noticeable in a shoe. A worn sock can become a home sock, used only at home. It does not need to be perfect. It just needs to cover the foot and feel acceptable. Some people move worn pairs to a backup section of the drawer, a small area where older socks live. This may vary. The drawer becomes a quiet map of preference, new pairs in one place, older pairs in another. Then the hand chooses that pair less often. The choice is subtle. It happens without words. The pair stays, but it is no longer the first pick. Accepting that it is near the end is also gradual. There is no big moment. The sock simply shifts toward the edge of rotation, and it waits there. Wear is gradual, and retirement is also gradual. Recap, wear is gradual, and retirement is also gradual. Chapter 31 Replacement as a calm decision. Replacement is often practical. A new pair joins the drawer. The old pair stays for a while, then leaves, and the routine stays mostly the same. Some people replace one pair at a time. Some replace many at once. This may vary. Replacing many can be a simple reset, especially when socks are bought as multi-packs. Many people choose the same type again. The goal is not novelty. The goal is returning to a familiar routine, the same length, the same thickness, the same simple feel. Some people choose a different thickness or length. This may vary. A thicker sock can feel more cushioned, and a thinner sock can feel less bulky in a shoe, and the drawer shifts slightly around that choice. Replacement often restores normal feel. A newer sock can feel steadier underfoot, less thin at heel and toe, and more consistent in grip at the opening. The old pair is sometimes kept briefly. It stays as a backup, or as a home pair, or as an extra pair near an entry area. This may vary. Then, later, it is removed. The removal is often quiet. The drawer simply becomes slightly less full, and the hand stops reaching for that worn pair. The drawer balance returns. There are enough pairs again. The rotation becomes easy again. The routine feels smooth. Back to the usual pair, back to the usual feel, back to the same cycle. Recap, back to the usual pair, back to the usual feel, back to the same cycle. Chapter 32 End of Life and Reuse without emphasis. When socks reach the end of daily wear, they can sometimes have a second life in a home, and it often happens without emphasis, just a practical reuse. Old socks can be used as cleaning cloths. The fabric is already shaped and easy to hold, and it can be pulled over a hand and used in a simple way. This may vary. Old socks can be used for dusting. The sock fits over fingers and knuckles, and it can reach into small areas, and it can pick up dust, and then it can be washed again, or it can be set aside. This may vary. Old socks can also be used as small covers in some homes. This may vary. A sock can cover a small object for protection, or it can cushion something briefly. Textile donation possibilities can differ by region. This may vary. Some places accept textiles more easily than others, and some do not. Mixed fibers can limit recycling. Many socks are blends, and that can make recycling inconsistent. This may vary. Often, disposal is simple household waste. The sock leaves quietly, and the home moves on without much notice. The drawer becomes slightly less full. Then it becomes full again later when new pairs enter. The cycle adjusts. The cycle ends quietly, and the drawer returns to what is still used. Recap: the cycle ends quietly, and the drawer returns to what is still used. Chapter 33: Quiet disappearance and the continuing cycle. Socks disappear from daily life without ceremony. The routine remains. The drawer still opens and closes, and the hand still reaches for a pair. A pair is removed from rotation. It might be thrown away. It might be moved to a cleaning pile. It might be set aside for a while. This may vary. A small space opens in a drawer. The gap is not dramatic. It is simply a little more room, a slightly looser stack. New pairs fill the gap later. Sometimes that happens quickly, and sometimes slowly, and this may vary. The drawer changes without urgency. Habits stay mostly the same. A person still chooses socks by length and feel, still matches pairs, still puts them on in the same order, toes then heel, smoothing at the ankle. Each morning the object returns. The drawer opens. A pair is lifted out. The socks are handled in the same simple way, and then the hands move on. Each night the object returns to the basket. Socks come off, turn partly inside out, and land in the same holding place, waiting for washing. The cycle continues with small changes, a new pair joining, an old pair leaving, the drawer adjusting, the basket filling, the wash happening again. Back to the pair of socks, and back to the same simple cycle again. Recap: back to the pair of socks, and back to the same simple cycle again.